Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Picture this. You wake up not to the jarring buzz of an alarm clock, but to something far more primal. Your eyes snap open in the pre-dawn darkness, and immediately every sense goes on high alert. There's a sound outside your shelter, a low, rumbling growl that makes your blood run cold. You know that sound. It's a saber-toothed cat, and it's close, really close. Welcome to morning in the Ice Age, roughly 15,000 years ago. This isn't some Hollywood fantasy, he Waldot. This was daily reality for our ancestors. And here's what's absolutely wild. They didn't just survive in this world of constant danger. They thrived in ways that would blow your mind. The first thing you notice as consciousness creeps in is the cold. Not the kind of cold where you reach for an extra blanket, but the bone-deep chill that tells you winter could kill you if you make one wrong move. The air itself feels different, thinner, sharper, carrying scents your modern nose would never detect. But your Stone Age nose? It's already processing a library of information. The smoke from last night's banked fire, still smouldering in the center of your shelter, the musky scent of the mammoth hides stretched over your sleeping area, and yes, definitely the acrid smell of that saber-toothed cat marking territory somewhere in the darkness outside. You don't bolt upright in panic, though. That would be a rookie mistake, and you're no rookie. You've been doing this dance with death since childhood. Instead, you listen. Really listen. Your hearing has been honed by years of survival into something that would seem supernatural to modern humans. You can distinguish between the padding footsteps of a cave lion and a leopard. You know the difference between wind through autumn leaves and the rustle of something moving through underbrush with deliberate intent. The growling fades. Whatever it was has moved on, at least for now. Time to start the day. Here's where things get really interesting. You might think that waking up in constant mortal danger would make for a miserable existence, but archaeological evidence tells us something completely different. Our Stone Age ancestors had something we've lost in our modern world. They had time. Think about that for a second. Time. The one thing everyone today says they don't have enough of, Stone Age people had in abundance. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies show they work an average of just 4 hours a day to meet all their survival needs. 4 hours. Compare that to our modern 8 to 12-hour work days, and suddenly you have to ask yourself, who's really living better? You slide out from under your sleeping furs, and yes, they're actual furs, not synthetic materials. The hide of a woolly rhinoceros, painstakingly prepared and softened until it's more comfortable than any modern sleeping bag. The preparation process alone is mind-blowing. These people had developed techniques for working leather that we're still trying to fully understand today. They knew which plants to use for tanning, how to smoke hides for preservation, and how to sew them together with sinew that was stronger than modern thread. As you stand, your body moves differently than a modern human's would. Your muscles are dense and powerful from a lifetime of practical use. Your bones are thick and strong because you've never spent a day sitting in a chair or staring at a screen. You don't have the chronic back pain that plagues modern office workers because your spine has developed exactly as evolution intended. The fire needs attention first. Always the fire. In this world, fire isn't just warmth and light, it's life itself. The knowledge of fire-making was so crucial that it was passed down with religious reverence. And here's something that'll surprise you. These. People had multiple methods for making fire. Flint and steel, fire bow, fire plow, even using ice as a lens to focus sunlight. They weren't just surviving with one lucky technique. They were masters of combustion. You add dried grass and small twigs to the glowing embers, breathing gently until flames lick upward. The smoke carries away into the morning air through a carefully designed opening in your shelter. Yes, designed. These weren't crude cave dwellings. Archaeological sites show us that Stone Age people understood architecture, ventilation, and engineering principles that allowed them to create comfortable living spaces, even in harsh climates. As the fire grows stronger, light begins to fill your shelter, and you can see the incredible artistry that surrounds you. The walls aren't bare stone or hide. They're decorated with paintings that would make modern artists weep with envy. Red ochre handprints, paintings of the animals you hunt, abstract designs that speak to something deep in the human soul. These people weren't just focused on survival, they were creating beauty. And speaking of beauty, it's time for the morning routine that archaeologists discovered only recently. A discovery so shocking it rewrote everything we thought we knew about Stone Age life. You reach for a small shell, not just any shell, but one that's been carefully selected and prepared. Inside is a mixture of red ochre, animal fat, and crushed minerals. You're about to apply makeup. That's right, makeup. 30,000 years ago. The evidence is undeniable. Archaeological sites across Europe show clear proof that both men and women use sophisticated cosmetics. Red ochre for lip color and cheek rouge, ground minerals for eyeshadow, even early forms of mascara made from charcoal and fat. This isn't speculation. We've found the grinding stones they used, the shells that served as palettes, even preserved residues of their cosmetic mixtures. Why does this matter? Because it completely destroys the myth of Stone Age people as grunting cave dwellers focused only on survival. These people had leisure time, artistic expression, and personal vanity. They cared about how they looked. They had social structures sophisticated enough that appearance mattered. As you apply the ochre mixture to your face, following patterns that identify your clan and status, you're participating in a tradition that's older than agriculture, older than written language, older than any of the things we consider the foundations of civilization. The morning routine continues. You check your tools, and what tools they are. That spear leaning against the wall, it's not a sharpened stick. It's a precision instrument, crafted with knowledge of physics, materials, science, and engineering. The shaft is made from carefully selected wood, heat-treated to increase its strength. The point is knapped from flint with such skill that modern archaeologists struggle to replicate the technique. The hafting, the way the point is attached to the shaft, uses adhesives made from tree resins and animal sinew that create a bond stronger than many modern glues. But here's what's really incredible. That spear point might not even be made by someone in your immediate group. Trade networks in the Stone Age spanned thousands of miles. Obsidian from Turkey has been found in archaeological sites 2,000 miles away. These people had sophisticated economies, diplomatic relationships, and trade agreements that connected communities across vast distances. You step outside your shelter, and the world that greets you is both beautiful and terrifying. Snow covers the landscape, but it's not the pristine white blanket you might imagine. This is a working landscape, marked by the passage of countless animals. Mammoth tracks, each footprint the size of a dinner plate. The scrape marks where a giant cave bear sharpened its claws on a tree. The territorial markings of predators that could tear you apart without breaking a sweat. But you read this landscape like a modern person reads a newspaper. Those tracks tell you where the mammoth herd passed, how long ago, whether they were moving quickly or grazing leisurely. The angle of broken branches tells you which direction the wind was blowing yesterday. The spacing of wolf tracks reveals whether they were hunting or just traveling. This brings us to one of the most remarkable discoveries about Stone Age people, their weather prediction abilities. These weren't people at the mercy of sudden storms. They could predict weather changes days in advance using techniques so subtle that modern meteorologists are only beginning to understand them. They felt barometric pressure changes in their bones, literally. People who live outdoors their entire lives develop a sensitivity to atmospheric pressure that's almost supernatural. They could tell when a storm was coming by the way their joints felt, by subtle changes in the behavior of birds, by the direction insects flew, cloud formations, wind patterns, the behavior of animals. All of this was a constantly updating weather report that they read with precision our satellites struggle to match. They knew when the seasons would turn, when rivers would flood, when the best hunting weather was approaching. But the real shocker about Stone Age life isn't their survival skills, it's their humanity. You know what archaeologists found when they started excavating Stone Age burial sites? Evidence that completely shattered every assumption about primitive brutality. They found graves of people who had lived for years, even decades, with severe disabilities. A Neanderthal man with a withered arm and leg who lived to old age. A woman with spina bifida who survived to adulthood. Children with developmental disabilities who were clearly cared for by their communities. Think about what this means. These weren't societies with surplus resources. Every calorie mattered. Every person needed to contribute to survival. And yet they cared for disabled members not for weeks or months, but for years. They fed them, protected them, included them in the social fabric of the group. This level of compassion and social support existed 50,000 years before we wrote down the first laws about caring for the vulnerable. These people understood something about humanity that we're still trying to learn, that a society's strength isn't measured by its ability to abandon the weak, but by its commitment to protecting them. The morning is advancing, and you can hear the sounds of your community waking up. Children laughing. Yes, laughing. Stone Age children played games, told jokes, and got into mischief just like modern kids. Adults calling to each other in languages that were every bit as complex and sophisticated as modern speech. The rhythm of daily life beginning. And then there's the most mind-blowing discovery of all, the one that made archaeologists question everything they thought they knew about ancient medicine. In sites across Europe, researchers found skulls with holes cut in them, perfect circles, cut with precision. At first, they assumed these were injuries, battle wounds or accidents, but then they looked closer. The bone around these holes showed clear signs of healing. New bone growth. These people had lived for months, even years, after having holes cut in their skulls. They were performing brain surgery, successful brain surgery, in the Stone Age. The procedure is called trepanation, and the evidence shows they were doing it 15,000 years ago, with survival rates that would be impressive even by modern standards. They knew enough about anatomy to avoid major blood vessels. They understood infection control well enough that most patients survived. They had developed pain management techniques using plant-based medicines. This wasn't desperate field medicine. This was sophisticated surgical practice passed down through generations of specialists. How is that even possible? Well, here's the thing about Stone Age people that we're only beginning to understand. They weren't stupid. Their brains were identical to ours. Identical. They had the same capacity for learning, problem-solving, and innovation that we do. The only difference was their knowledge base and their tools. But in many ways, their knowledge was deeper than ours. They understood their environment with an intimacy that we've lost. They knew every plant, every animal, every seasonal change in their territory. They could identify hundreds of species by sight, sound, and smell. They understood the medicinal properties of dozens of plants, knowledge that modern pharmaceutical companies are desperately trying to recover. Take willow bark, for instance. They knew it reduced pain and fever 40,000 years before we isolated salicylic acid and created aspirin. They knew which mushrooms had antibiotic properties, which plants could induce labor, which roots could treat digestive problems. This wasn't superstition. This was empirical knowledge built up over thousands of generations of careful observation. As the morning progresses and your community comes fully to life, you witness something that modern humans have largely lost: true interdependence. Everyone has skills that others need. The toolmaker, the tracker, the healer, the storyteller. Each person's knowledge is crucial to the group's survival. And here's what's really beautiful about it. They had time for each other. Time to teach children not just how to survive, but how to create beauty. Time to develop music. Yes, they had sophisticated musical instruments, including 40,000-year-old flutes that still play beautiful melodies. Time for storytelling that preserved knowledge and entertainment in equal measure. The sun climbs higher, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. You hear the distant trumpeting of a mammoth herd, the howl of wolves, the cry of birds that went extinct before the first cities were built. This is a world more alive, more vibrant, more dangerous, and more beautiful than anything we can imagine today. But here's the most important thing to understand about this morning in the Ice Age. This isn't ancient history. This is your history. Every human alive today carries the genes, the instincts, and the deep-coded memories of these people. Their knowledge, their fears, their hopes, their incredible capacity for survival and creativity, it's all still inside you. That feeling you get when you're in nature, that sense of coming home, that's them. The way your body responds to stress, the foods you crave, the way you bond with others in times of crisis. All of it traces back to these mornings 30,000 years ago, when survival depended on community, knowledge, and an unbreakable connection to the natural world. As our Stone Age morning continues, the real adventures are just beginning. Because what you don't know yet is that you're about to discover how everything, absolutely everything, about human civilization started with one simple moment. One person picking up one rock and changing the course of life on Earth forever. But that's a story for what comes next. Are you ready to witness the day everything changed? 3.3 million years ago, in what we now call Ethiopia, someone picked up a rock. Just a rock. Nothing special about it, really. Volcanic stone, the kind scattered across the African landscape by millions of years of geological upheaval. But here's the thing that gives me chills every time I think about it. That simple act, that moment when fingers closed around stone, changed everything. Absolutely everything. Picture the scene. The sun beats down on the Ethiopian highlands. The air shimmers with heat, and in the distance, acacia trees dot a landscape that looks almost alien to modern eyes. This is Earth 3.3 million years ago. No cities, no agriculture, no written language. Just the raw, untamed pulse of a planet still figuring itself out. And there, in this ancient world, stands a figure that would look both familiar and strange to us. Not quite human as we know it, but unmistakably our ancestor. Scientists call this species Australopithecus afarensis. He's Asian. Lucy's people, if you know that famous fossil. They're about 4 feet tall, with long arms and powerful hands. Their brains are small by our standards, about the size of a modern chimpanzee's. But those hands are about to make history. Our ancestor, let's call them the toolmaker, has a problem. There's food inside something, and they can't get to it. Maybe it's bone marrow inside a massive leg bone. Maybe it's seeds inside a tough pod. The exact scenario doesn't matter. What matters is the moment of inspiration that follows. They look around, their eyes settle on that volcanic rock, and then, and this is where everything changes, they pick up a second rock. They position the first stone carefully, and they strike it with the second. The sound echoes across the landscape. Crack! Stone fragments fly. The smell of fresh rock dust fills the air. And suddenly, there in their palm, is something that has never existed before in 4 billion years of Earth's history. A tool deliberately crafted by intelligent design. You might think, come on, that's not such a big deal. Animals use tools all the time. And you're right, they do. Chimpanzees use sticks to fish for termites. Sea otters crack shells with rocks. Crows bend wire to hook food. But here's what makes this moment revolutionary. This is the first time any creature on Earth deliberately modified one object to create another tool. Think about that leap. It's not just using what's available, it's imagining what could be. It's seeing potential in raw material. It's the birth of technology, engineering, and human innovation all wrapped up. In one stone striking another, the implications hit you immediately. This simple act requires abstract thinking, planning, and the ability to visualize cause and effect. Our toolmaker had to imagine the tool before it existed. They had to understand that by striking stone in a particular way, they could create a sharp edge. They had to grasp the concept of improving their situation through deliberate modification of their environment. This is the cognitive revolution in action, millions of years before we traditionally date it. This is the moment when our ancestors stopped being just another African ape and started down the path to becoming us. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. That first tool, that crude, simple stone knife, was just the beginning. Archaeological evidence shows that within a few 100,000 years, our ancestors had developed an entire toolkit. Choppers for breaking bones, scrapers for cleaning hides, awls for poking holes. Each tool represented not just improved functionality, but improved thinking. And then came the discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about human evolution. It happened at a place called Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, and the detective who cracked the case was a woman named Mary Leakey. Picture Mary in 1960, working under the brutal African sun, carefully excavating layer after layer of ancient sediment. She's looking for fossils, but what she finds is something unexpected. Stone tools scattered around ancient animal bones. But not just any arrangement, the bones show clear-cut marks, obviously made by the stone tools found nearby. This was the smoking gun that proved our ancestors weren't just scavengers picking over the leftovers of other predators' kills. They were hunters, active, deliberate hunters who used technology to take down prey that would have been impossible to kill with bare hands. The evidence was undeniable. Cut marks on the bones appeared in exactly the perfect, right places to efficiently extract meat and marrow. The tools were found in patterns that suggested organized butchering sites. Our ancestors weren't just getting lucky with random carcasses, they were planning hunts, executing kills, and processing meat with sophisticated techniques. But the real game changer was still to come. Because evolution doesn't just happen to individuals, it happens to entire species, entire families of related species. And what Mary Leakey and other archaeologists began to uncover was evidence of something almost unbelievable. Multiple human species living on Earth at the same time. Not one human lineage slowly evolving into modern humans, but a whole family tree of human species, each adapted to different environments, each developing their own technologies, each living their own version of what it meant to be human. Homo habilis, RAC the handyman, living alongside Australopithecus. Homo erectus spreading across Africa and into Asia, while other species stayed put. Neanderthals in Europe developing their own sophisticated cultures. Denisovans in Asia creating technologies we're only beginning to understand. Think about what this means. For millions of years, Earth wasn't home to just one type of human. It was home to multiple human species, each as intelligent and capable as any other, each solving the problems of survival in their own unique ways. We weren't alone, we were never alone. And then, 70,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Something that scientists call the cognitive revolution, even though the groundwork had been laid millions of years earlier with that first stone tool. Suddenly, and I mean suddenly in evolutionary terms, modern humans began creating art, not just simple markings, but sophisticated symbolic representations of their world. Cave paintings that weren't just pictures, but stories. Jewelry that wasn't just decoration, but communication. Tools that weren't just functional, but beautiful. The archaeological record from this period reads like an explosion of human creativity. Bone flutes that still play haunting melodies. Carved figurines that capture the human form with artistic skill that wouldn't look out of place in a modern gallery. Trade networks that spanned continents, moving precious materials thousands of miles from their sources. What triggered this revolution? The honest answer is that we don't know for sure. Maybe it was a genetic mutation that enhanced language abilities. Maybe it was cultural innovations that reached a tipping point. Maybe it was environmental pressures that forced rapid adaptation. Or maybe it was something even more subtle, the moment when human consciousness reached a critical mass that allowed for symbolic thinking. But here's what we do know. This wasn't just humans getting smarter. This was humans becoming modern. The people who created that art 70,000 years ago thought like us, felt like us, dreamed like us. They were us. And they weren't alone on the planet. That's perhaps the most mind-blowing part of this story. While modern humans were developing these revolutionary capabilities, other human species were doing the same thing in their own ways. Neanderthals were creating sophisticated tools and probably had language. Denisovans were adapting to high-altitude environments in ways we still don't fully understand. This brings us to 2003 and a discovery that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. On a remote island in Indonesia called Flores, researchers uncovered bones that defied everything we thought we knew about human evolution. The bones belonged to a completely unknown human species. But here's the kicker. They were tiny. Like, really tiny. Adults who stood only about 3 feet tall, with brains the size of a grapefruit. The media dubbed them hobbits, and for good reason. They looked like something out of a fantasy novel. But this wasn't fantasy. This was real, recent human evolution happening in isolation. These little humans, officially called Homo floresiensis, had been living on Flores Island until just 12,000 years ago. That's practically yesterday in evolutionary terms. They were making tools, hunting, and probably had their own complex culture right up until the end of the last ice age. Imagine if they were still alive today. Imagine meeting a human species that took a completely different evolutionary path, but was still unmistakably human. It would revolutionize everything we think we know about intelligence, culture, and what it means to be human. The discovery of the Flores hobbits proved something incredible. Human evolution didn't end with us. Even after modern humans spread across the globe, evolution kept experimenting, kept trying new approaches to being human. These weren't primitive throwbacks. They were a sophisticated species adapted to their specific environment. And here's where the story gets personal, where it connects directly to you listening right now. Because all of these human species, all of these different experiments in being human, have left their mark on us. When modern humans spread out of Africa and encountered other human species, they didn't just compete with them, they integrated with them. Genetic analysis has revealed that most people alive today carry DNA from multiple human species. If you're of non-African descent, you probably have Neanderthal genes. If you're from certain parts of Asia or Oceania, you might have Denisovan genes. Some populations show evidence of interbreeding with species we haven't even identified yet. This isn't just scientific trivia, this is your family history. Those other human species didn't go extinct in the way we used to think. They became part of us. Their innovations, their adaptations, their solutions to survival challenges, APC, all of it got incorporated into the human genome. That ability to efficiently process oxygen at high altitude. Thank Denisovan genes. Enhanced immune responses to certain pathogens. Neanderthal contributions. The capacity for diverse hair and skin colors. Gifts from multiple human species mixing their genetic innovations. But the most incredible part of this story isn't the biology, it's the technology. Remember that first stone tool, that moment 3.3 million years ago when everything changed? That innovation didn't stop. It accelerated. From simple choppers, our ancestors developed increasingly sophisticated tools. Spears with multiple components, clothing sewn with bone needles, boats capable of crossing open ocean. By 40,000 years ago, humans were creating technologies so advanced that we struggle to replicate them today. And here's what gives me chills. The principles behind those first stone tools are still with us. That moment when someone realized they could modify their environment to solve problems, that's the same principle behind every human invention since. The smartphone in your pocket, the International Space Station, the internet connecting billions of people, all of it traces back to that first moment when stone struck stone. The line from that first tool to modern technology isn't just metaphorical. It's direct. Each innovation built on previous ones. Each generation of humans added their own improvements to the toolkit of survival and enhancement. The cognitive abilities that allowed our ancestors to envision a sharp edge hidden inside raw stone are the same abilities that allow modern engineers to envision faster computers, better medicines, and technologies we haven't invented yet. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about that day, everything changed, isn't what it meant for technology. It's what it meant for us as a species. That moment when our ancestor picked up that rock and saw not just stone, but possibility. That was the moment we became human in the deepest sense. It was the moment we stopped accepting the world as it was and started imagining the world as it could be. It was the birth of hope, innovation, and the restless human drive to improve everything we touch. That first tool wasn't just a better way to process food. It was proof that humans could envision a future different from the present and then make that future real. Every time you use a tool, any tool, you're participating in a tradition that stretches back 3.3 million years. Every time you solve a problem by modifying something in your environment, you're channeling that same spark of innovation that lit up our ancestors' mind when stone first struck stone. The day everything changed wasn't just one day. It was the beginning of all the days that followed, each one building on the innovations of the past, each one carrying us further from our animal origins and closer to our human destiny. But our ancestors' innovations went far beyond just making tools. They developed skills that would seem like superpowers to modern humans. Skills so advanced, so perfectly adapted to survival, that modern military forces study them to this day. That's where our journey takes us next, into the incredible, almost unbelievable abilities that our ancestors developed to thrive in a world where every day was a matter of life and death. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Elite special forces units around the world study Stone Age hunting techniques, not as historical curiosity, but as practical training for modern warfare. Why? Because after millions of years of development, we still haven't invented anything more effective than the tracking, stalking, and persistence hunting methods our ancestors perfected. Let me paint you a picture of what human beings were capable of 50,000 years ago, and prepare to have everything you think you know about primitive life completely turned upside down. Imagine you're a tracker in the Kalahari Desert. You crouch down and examine what looks like absolutely nothing to modern eyes is being a flutement, just sand, rocks, and scattered vegetation. But to your Stone Age eyes, this blank landscape is telling an incredible story. You see a tiny depression in the sand, barely visible, and immediately you know that a kudu antelope passed this way exactly 7 hours and 23 minutes ago. You know it was a female. You know she was pregnant. You know she was slightly favoring her left rear leg, probably from stepping wrong on rocky ground about 2 miles back. How is that even possible? How can someone read that much information from what appears to be nothing? The answer lies in sensory capabilities that modern humans have almost completely lost. Our ancestors lived in a world where missing a single detail could mean death, so their senses evolved to a level of acuity that seems almost supernatural to us. Take vision, for instance. Modern humans think we have good eyesight if we can read an eye chart at 20 feet. But Stone Age humans could track animals by noticing that a single blade of grass was bent at a slightly different angle than its neighbors. They could spot movement at distances that would make our best snipers jealous. They could read weather patterns in cloud formations so subtle that our meteorologists need satellite imagery to detect the same information. But here's where it gets really incredible. They didn't just see these things, they understood them. That bent blade of grass didn't just tell them an animal had passed by. It told them what kind of animal, how big it was, how fast it was moving, what direction it was headed, and whether it was injured, pregnant, or carrying young. This wasn't guesswork. This was empirical science based on thousands of generations of accumulated knowledge. Every hunter knew that a certain type of track pattern meant an animal was walking normally, while a slightly different pattern meant it was injured and would be easier prey. They understood biomechanics well enough to predict exactly how an animal would move based on tiny clues in its tracks. And tracking was just the beginning. Once they found their prey, the real superpowers kicked in. Persistence hunting, technique that Special Forces units study, time, was perhaps the most remarkable hunting method ever developed. Here's how it worked. Instead of trying to outrun their prey, humans used their unique physiological advantages to literally run animals to death. Humans are the only large mammals on Earth that can regulate body temperature through sweating. Every other large animal has to stop and pant to cool down. This gave our ancestors an incredible advantage. They could run at a steady pace for hours, while their prey had to stop periodically to cool off. Picture this hunt. A group of hunters spots a kudu antelope in the morning heat. The kudu can sprint at 40 miles per hour, much faster than any human. But here's the thing, it can't maintain that speed. After a few minutes of running, it has to stop and pant. The humans, meanwhile, maintain a steady pace of about 8 miles per hour. Not fast, but relentless. When the kudu stops to cool down, the humans keep coming. The animal bolts again, runs until it overheats, stops to pant. The humans keep coming. This deadly game of endurance can go on for 6 to 8 hours. The kudu becomes increasingly exhausted while the humans, designed by evolution for exactly this type of pursuit, maintain their steady pace. Eventually, the animal collapses from heat exhaustion, and the humans move in for the kill. It sounds brutal, and it is, but it's also incredibly sophisticated. The hunters had to understand animal physiology, terrain advantages, weather conditions, and group coordination. They had to maintain perfect teamwork for hours, with different hunters taking turns leading the chase, others cutting off escape routes, and everyone staying hydrated and energized for the entire pursuit. Modern, ultramarathon runners train for years to develop the kind of endurance that Stone Age hunters used regularly. And even then, modern athletes are running on flat, prepared surfaces with specially designed shoes, energy drinks, and medical support. Our ancestors did it barefoot across rough terrain while carrying weapons and tracking their prey simultaneously. But the really mind-blowing part isn't their physical capabilities, it's their knowledge. These people understood their environment with a depth that makes modern expertise look shallow. They knew the medicinal properties of hundreds of plants, not just 1 or 2 remedies, but comprehensive pharmaceutical knowledge that could treat everything from headaches to life-threatening infections. And this wasn't trial and error folk medicine. Archaeological evidence shows they were using plant compounds that modern science has proven to be highly effective. Take willow bark, which contains salicylic acid, ADE, the active ingredient in aspirin. Stone Age people were using willow bark to treat pain and fever 40,000 years before anyone understood why it worked. They knew which part of the tree to harvest, when to harvest it for maximum potency, how to prepare it, and what dosages to use. But that's just one example. They knew that certain tree molds had antibiotic properties, essentially using penicillin, thousands of years before Alexander Fleming's famous discovery. They knew which plants could induce labor, which could prevent infection, which could ease digestive problems, and which could serve as effective contraceptives. This knowledge was so sophisticated that modern pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars trying to rediscover what Stone Age people knew by heart. Ethnobotanists, scientists who study traditional plant use, regularly find that indigenous groups are using compounds that turn out to have powerful medicinal properties that Western medicine never suspected. And then there's the surgery. We've already talked about trepanation, a.c. Stone Age brain surgery with survival rates that would be impressive today. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Archaeological evidence shows they were also performing successful amputations, treating broken bones with techniques that promoted proper healing, and even doing dental work. Ötzi, the Iceman, that 5,000-year-old mummy found in the Alps, had evidence of sophisticated medical treatment. His tattoos weren't decorative, they were therapeutic, placed precisely over acupuncture points that modern medicine uses to treat the same conditions he suffered from. He had been treated for arthritis, digestive problems, and chronic pain using techniques that are still effective today. But perhaps the most impressive medical knowledge was their understanding of surgery and pain management. The survival rates for trepanation, drilling holes in skulls, ranged from 60 to 90% depending on the region and time period. Compare that to 19th century surgical mortality rates, and Stone Age doctors were actually better at keeping patients alive than many civilized surgeons. How did they achieve such success? They understood infection control. They knew which plants had antiseptic properties. They developed surgical tools that were sharper than many modern instruments. And they had sophisticated pain management techniques using natural anesthetics. The willow bark that provided pain relief was just the beginning. They knew how to use poppy extracts for serious pain, cannabis for various medical conditions, and dozens of other plants that could everything from numb surgical sites to help patients relax during procedures. This medical knowledge was passed down through generations of specialists. Not everyone was a surgeon or healer. This was specialized knowledge that required years of training and practice. Stone Age societies had medical schools, essentially, where experts taught apprentices the complex skills needed to save lives, and the sophistication of their knowledge extended far beyond medicine. They understood astronomy well enough to navigate by the stars with incredible precision. They could predict seasonal changes months in advance, based on subtle environmental cues. They understood animal behavior so thoroughly that they could predict exactly where specific animals would be at specific times of year. This environmental knowledge was literally a matter of life and death. Knowing when and where to find certain plants, when animals would migrate through specific areas, when weather patterns would change, all of this information was crucial for survival. And they didn't just know these things vaguely. They knew them with the precision of modern scientists. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups show they can identify over 300 plant species and know the specific uses for each one. They understand the life cycles of dozens of animal species well enough to predict behavior months in advance. They can read weather patterns with accuracy that often surpasses modern meteorological forecasting. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. In recent years, materials scientists have been studying Stone Age technologies and discovering that our ancestors developed solutions that are superior to many modern alternatives. Take their adhesives, for example. Stone Age people developed glues made from tree resins, plant fibers, and animal products that created bonds stronger than many modern synthetic adhesives. These glues had to work in extreme temperatures, resist moisture, and maintain their strength for years. Modern engineers studying these ancient formulas have developed new industrial adhesives based on Stone Age innovations. Their composite tools were engineering marvels. A Stone Age spear wasn't just a sharp rock attached to a stick. It was a carefully engineered system with multiple components, each optimized for specific functions. The shaft was selected for proper weight distribution and flexibility. The point was shaped for maximum penetration and durability. The hafting system used multiple materials, resins, sinew, plant fibers, to create a joint that was stronger than the individual components. These tools had to perform under extreme stress. A spear point hitting a mammoth bone at high velocity experiences forces that would shatter inferior materials. The fact that Stone Age tools routinely survive such impacts and could be repaired and reused multiple times speaks to an understanding of material science that we're still trying to fully comprehend. And then there's their understanding of physics. Atlatls, spear-throwing devices used by Stone Age hunters, increase throwing velocity through principles of leverage and energy transfer that modern engineers recognize as highly sophisticated. The mathematical calculations required to optimize an atlatl for maximum efficiency are complex enough that modern recreations often don't perform as well as original Stone Age examples. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Stone Age knowledge was how it was transmitted and preserved. Without written language, they had to maintain incredibly complex information through oral tradition, hands-on training, and cultural practices. Think about what this means. A healer had to memorize the properties, preparation methods, and dosages for hundreds of medicinal plants. A tracker had to learn to recognize and interpret thousands of different signs and patterns. A toolmaker had to master the precise techniques needed to create dozens of different implements. All of this knowledge had to be transmitted perfectly from one generation to the next, with no margin for error. They developed memory techniques that were so effective that modern cognitive scientists study them to understand how the human brain can store and retrieve vast amounts of information. Storytelling, songs, ritual practices, and hands-on apprenticeships all serve to encode and transmit knowledge with remarkable fidelity. And the knowledge wasn't just practical, it was constantly evolving. Archaeological evidence shows continuous innovation and improvement in Stone Age technologies. Tool designs became more sophisticated over time. Hunting techniques were refined and optimized. Medical practices advanced based on accumulated experience. This wasn't a static, primitive society stumbling along with crude technologies. This was a dynamic, innovative culture that was constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible with the materials and knowledge available to them. Modern archaeologists have tried to replicate Stone Age technologies and found it incredibly difficult. Knapping stone tools to the precision achieved by Stone Age craftsmen requires years of practice. Creating fire with Stone Age methods takes modern people hours to accomplish what our ancestors could do in minutes. Tracking animals with Stone Age techniques is so challenging that it's considered an advanced survival skill even among modern experts. The more we study Stone Age capabilities, the more we realize that the term primitive is completely inappropriate. These people weren't primitive, they were highly specialized experts, living in a world that demanded perfection. The smallest mistake in tool-making, tracking, or medicine could mean death, so their standards of excellence were actually higher than what we accept in many modern professions. And here's something that really puts things in perspective. Many of their innovations are still with us. The basic principles of leverage, the use of composite materials, the understanding of human endurance capabilities, the knowledge of plant-based medicines, all of these Stone Age discoveries remain relevant and useful today. In fact, some of their solutions were so effective that we abandoned them only to rediscover their value later. Modern. The distance runners are learning that the barefoot running techniques used by Stone Age persistence hunters are actually more efficient and less injury-prone than running in modern shoes. Military units are studying Stone Age camouflage and stealth techniques because they're more effective than many high-tech alternatives. The pharmaceutical industry regularly investigates traditional plant medicines that trace back to Stone Age knowledge, finding that many of them contain active compounds that are highly effective for treating modern diseases. Engineers study Stone Age tool designs to understand how to create more durable, efficient implements using modern materials. But the most important lesson from Stone Age expertise isn't about specific techniques or technologies. It's about the level of knowledge and skill that humans can achieve when survival depends on excellence. These people developed capabilities that seem almost superhuman to us, because their environment demanded nothing less than mastery. Every tracking session was a life-or-death test of observational skills. Every hunt required perfect coordination and endurance. Every medical treatment had to work, because there was no backup plan. This constant pressure for excellence, sustained over thousands of generations, produced humans with capabilities that we've largely lost in our modern, cushioned world. And that brings us to one of the most exciting discoveries in recent archaeology, the realization that we're still finding Stone Age innovations. In caves around the world, archaeologists continue to uncover evidence of technologies and knowledge that we never suspected our ancestors possessed. The story of human innovation didn't start with the Industrial Revolution, or even with agriculture. It started 3 million years ago with that first stone tool, and it accelerated continuously through the Stone Age as our ancestors developed solution after solution to the challenges of survival in a hostile world. But the Stone Age story isn't just about ancient history. It's about ongoing discovery, about archaeologists and scientists working like detectives to uncover the secrets our ancestors left behind. It's about breakthrough moments when a single discovery rewrites everything we thought we knew about human capabilities. And some of those breakthrough moments have been so dramatic, so unexpected, that they read like adventure novels. Picture this. September 12th, 1940, 4 teenagers and a dog stumble into a hole in the ground near Lascaux, France, and what they find inside will shake the archaeological world to its foundations. That's where our journey takes us next, into the thrilling world of archaeological detective work, where every discovery has the potential to rewrite human history. September 12th, 1940. 4 French teenagers are exploring the countryside near the village of Montignac when their dog, Robot, suddenly disappears down a hole. The boys, Marcel Revidat, Jacques Marsal, Georges Agnel, and Simon Coencas, peer into the darkness and see what looks like a cave entrance partially blocked by fallen rocks. Now, you have to understand the context here. World War II is raging across Europe. German forces have occupied France. These teenagers are living in a world turned upside down by conflict and uncertainty. The last thing anyone expects is a discovery that will revolutionize our understanding of human history. But that's exactly what's about to happen. The boys squeeze through the opening and find themselves in a vast underground chamber. Marcel strikes a match, and in the flickering light, they see something that stops them dead in their tracks. The walls are covered with paintings. Not just any paintings, but massive, sophisticated, breathtakingly beautiful depictions of animals that went extinct thousands of years ago. Bulls, horses, deer, and bison dance across the cave walls in ochre, charcoal, and mineral pigments. The artwork is so sophisticated, so skillfully executed, that the boys' first thought is that someone is playing an elaborate prank. This can't be ancient art. Ancient people couldn't have created anything this advanced. But as they explore deeper into the cave system, the sheer scale and consistency of the artwork becomes undeniable. Chamber after chamber filled with paintings, some featuring animals 15 feet long, compositions that show clear understanding of perspective, movement, and artistic technique. This isn't graffiti or crude scribbling. This is masterful art created by people who understood their craft at a level that rivals anything produced since. When the boys finally emerge and report their discovery, the initial reaction from experts is skepticism bordering on disbelief. 17,000 years old? Impossible. Prehistoric humans weren't capable of creating art this sophisticated. The paintings must be forgeries, or at best, much more recent than claimed. It took years of scientific analysis to convince the skeptics that what those teenagers had stumbled into was genuine Stone Age art. Carbon dating, analysis of pigments, examination of the cave's geological history, every test confirmed the impossible. Stone Age artists had created a masterpiece that rivaled anything in the Louvre, but Lascaux was just the beginning. The discovery opened the floodgates for a new kind of archaeology, one that approached ancient sites with the mindset of detectives solving a mystery. And the mysteries that emerged from subsequent discoveries were more incredible than anyone could have imagined. Jump forward to September 19th, 1991. Two German hikers, Helmut and Erika Seemann, are walking along a mountain path in the Ötztal Alps when they spot something dark protruding from a glacier. At first glance, it looks like rubbish, maybe discarded climbing equipment. But as they get closer, they realize they're looking at a human body. Their first assumption is that they've found the victim of a recent climbing accident. The Alps claim several lives every year, and bodies are sometimes discovered when glaciers shift or melt. They report the find to authorities and think nothing more of it. But when archaeologists arrive to examine the body, they quickly realize this is no recent accident victim. The man they pull from the ice has been frozen for over 5,000 years. They've discovered a naturally mummified Stone Age human, perfectly preserved by the alpine cold. The media dubs him Ötzi, the Iceman, and as researchers begin to study his remarkably preserved remains, an incredible story emerges. This isn't just a Stone Age body, it's a time capsule that provides an intimate glimpse into daily life 5 millennia ago. Ötzi's last meal is still in his stomach. Ibex meat, red deer, einkorn wheat, and traces of toxic bracken fern. The fern is particularly interesting because it's not food, ibex. It's medicine, used to treat intestinal parasites. Even in his final hours, Ötzi was self-medicating with knowledge that took thousands of years to accumulate. His clothing and equipment are a revelation. Leather leggings, a grass cloak, a bearskin cap, and shoes stuffed with grass for insulation. His gear includes a copper axe, a flint dagger, arrows with expertly crafted points, and a bow made from yew wood. Every item represents sophisticated knowledge of materials, craftsmanship, and survival techniques. But the real detective story emerges when researchers begin analyzing how Ötzi died. An arrowhead embedded in his shoulder, defensive wounds on his hands, signs of a struggle. This isn't a peaceful death from exposure. Ötzi was murdered, shot with an arrow, and left to die on the mountain. Through forensic analysis worthy of a modern crime scene investigation, researchers pieced together Ötzi's final days. He had been in at least 2 fights in the days before his death. He was fleeing something or someone when he was killed. The arrow that killed him was fired from below, suggesting an ambush as he tried to escape over the mountain pass. But here's what makes Ötzi's story so remarkable. It's not just about one man's death. It's about an entire civilization that existed 5,000 years ago, complete with violence, medicine, sophisticated technology, and complex social relationships. Ötzi wasn't a primitive caveman. He was a member of a sophisticated society with its own conflicts, knowledge systems, and cultural practices. The forensic analysis continues to yield incredible discoveries. His tattoos weren't decorative, they were therapeutic, placed precisely over acupuncture points that correspond to areas where he suffered from arthritis and other ailments. His tools show evidence of repair and reuse, indicating a culture that valued conservation and craftsmanship over disposability. Even his DNA tells a story. Genetic analysis reveals that Ötzi had brown eyes, blood type O, was lactose intolerant, and had a genetic predisposition to heart disease. He shares genetic markers with modern populations from Sardinia and Corsica, providing clues about ancient migration patterns and population movements. But Otzi was just one incredible discovery in a decade that revolutionized archaeology through advances in genetic analysis. In 2008, researchers at the Max Planck Institute announced that they had successfully extracted DNA from a 40,000-year-old finger bone found in a Siberian cave called Denisova. The initial assumption was that the bone belonged to either a modern human or a Neanderthal, the only human species known to have lived in that region at that time. But when the genetic analysis came back, it revealed something completely unexpected. This wasn't DNA from any known human species. It was from a previously unknown branch of the human family tree. The Denisovans, as they came to be called, were a sister species to Neanderthals who had adapted to life in Asia. But here's the kicker. They didn't just live in the distant past. Genetic analysis of modern human populations shows that people from Papua New Guinea, Australia, and parts of Asia carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA in their genomes. Think about what this means. These weren't extinct human relatives who disappeared without a trace. They became part of us. When modern humans migrated into Asia, they encountered Denisovans and interbred with them. The genetic innovations that allowed Denisovans to thrive in harsh Asian environments became part of the modern human genetic toolkit. Some of those Denisovan genes are still providing advantages today. High-altitude populations in Tibet carry Denisovan gene variants that help them process oxygen more efficiently in thin mountain air. Without these ancient genetic contributions, modern humans might never have been able to colonize some of the world's most challenging environments. But the genetic revolution in archaeology was just getting started. In 2010, scientists announced that they had successfully sequenced the entire Neanderthal genome from 40,000-year-old bone fragments. The results were stunning. Most non-African human populations carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. Suddenly, Neanderthals weren't our distant extinct cousins. They were our ancestors. Their genes are still active in modern humans, influencing everything from immune system function to hair texture to skin color. Some Neanderthal gene variants provide protection against certain diseases. Others influence modern human metabolism and cold adaptation. The picture emerging from genetic archaeology is radically different from the old story of human evolution as a linear progression from primitive to advanced. Instead, we're seeing a complex web of interbreeding between multiple human species, each contributing their own genetic innovations to the modern human genome. And the discoveries keep coming. In 2013, researchers announced the recovery of DNA from a 400,000-year-old human fossil from Spain, the oldest human DNA ever extracted. In 2015, they found DNA in cave sediments, allowing them to identify human species that lived in specific locations even when no bones or fossils were found. But perhaps the most shocking discovery came in 2017 from a site called Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Archaeologists uncovered fossil remains that looked unmistakably like modern humans. The problem? They were 300,000 years old, Hughlevnech-Sepsi, pushing back the origin of our species by over 100,000 years. The Jebel Irhoud discovery rewrote the entire timeline of human evolution. Our species didn't emerge in East Africa 150,000 years ago as previously thought. We evolved across the entire African continent over a much longer period, with different populations contributing to what eventually became modern humanity. Each new discovery in this detective story reveals that human history is far more complex, far more interconnected, and far more recent than we ever imagined. The sophisticated art at Lascaux, the preserved life story of Otzi, the genetic evidence of interbreeding between multiple human species, all of it paints a picture of our ancestors as complex, intelligent, adaptable people who are far more like us than we ever suspected. But here's what makes these archaeological detective stories so compelling. They're not just about the past. They're about understanding who we are today. Every genetic discovery reveals something new about modern human capabilities and characteristics. Every preserved artifact shows us technologies and knowledge that we can still learn from. The detective work continues in laboratories around the world, where scientists are developing new techniques for extracting information from ancient remains. DNA analysis that seemed impossible just a few decades ago is now routine. Protein analysis can provide information from fossils millions of years old. Chemical analysis of ancient pottery reveals what people ate, what medicines they used, and how they prepared their food. And with each new technique, each new discovery, the picture of our Stone Age ancestors becomes more remarkable. These weren't primitive people struggling to survive in a harsh world. They were sophisticated, intelligent, creative individuals who developed technologies and knowledge systems that we're still trying to fully understand. The detectives of deep time are still at work, still uncovering the secrets our ancestors left behind. In caves and archaeological sites around the world, researchers are finding evidence of capabilities and achievements that constantly force us to revise our understanding of what it means to be human. But perhaps the most important discoveries aren't happening in remote archaeological sites. They're happening in modern laboratories, where scientists are realizing that many Stone Age innovations are still relevant, still useful, and still superior to modern alternatives. That's where our story goes next, into the surprising ways that Stone Age technologies and knowledge continue to influence and improve our modern world. Because the truth is, the Stone Age never really ended. We just covered it with concrete and forgot how much we still depend on innovations that our ancestors developed millions of years ago. Here's something that's going to mess with your head. The smartphone in your pocket exists because of a breakthrough made 2.6 million years ago. I'm not speaking metaphorically here. I'm talking about a direct, traceable line of technological innovation that connects the first stone tool to the device you're probably holding right now. Think about it. What is a smartphone really? It's a tool that extends human capabilities. It amplifies our ability to communicate, to access information, to navigate our environment, to document our experiences. The core concept, using external objects to enhance what the human body can naturally do, that's pure Stone Age thinking. But let's dig deeper than that, because the connections between ancient and modern technology are way more specific and way more surprising than you might expect. Remember that first hafted spear we talked about? The innovation where Stone Age people figured out how to attach a stone point to a wooden shaft? That breakthrough solved a fundamental problem: how to extend human reach and apply force at a distance. Now fast forward to today, and what do you think the International Space Station is? It's a hafted spear on a cosmic scale, humans extending their reach into an environment where their bodies can't naturally survive. The engineering principles are identical. Just like that, Stone Age spear had to solve problems of materials compatibility, stress distribution, and failure prevention. The space station had to solve the same fundamental challenges using more advanced materials. The thinking process, the problem-solving approach, the basic engineering concepts, all of it traces back to Stone Age innovations. But here's where it gets really wild. Modern engineers studying Stone Age technologies often find that ancient solutions are actually superior to contemporary alternatives. Take adhesives, for example. Stone Age people developed glues from tree resins, plant fibers, and animal products that had to work in extreme conditions. These adhesives had to maintain their strength through temperature swings, from blazing summer heat to Arctic winter cold. They had to resist moisture, withstand mechanical stress, and remain functional for years without maintenance. When materials scientists analyzed these ancient adhesives, they discovered chemical compositions and bonding mechanisms that outperform many modern synthetic glues. Companies are now developing new industrial adhesives based on Stone Age formulas because they're more durable, more environmentally friendly, and often stronger than petroleum-based alternatives. The same thing happened with composite materials. That Stone Age spear wasn't just a rock tied to a stick. It was a carefully engineered composite tool that combined different materials to achieve properties that none of the individual components possessed alone. The flexibility of wood, the hardness of stone, the tensile strength of sinew, and the waterproofing of tree resin, all integrated into a single optimized tool. Modern composite engineering uses the exact same principles. Carbon fiber composites in aircraft, fiberglass in boats, reinforced concrete in buildings. 200. All of these technologies apply Stone Age insights about combining materials to create superior performance characteristics. But the most mind-blowing connection between Stone Age and modern technology isn't about materials or engineering principles. It's about something much more fundamental: social networks. British anthropologist Robin Dunbar discovered that humans have a cognitive limit on the number of stable social relationships they can maintain. That number, around 150 people, is called Dunbar's number, and it appears to be hardwired into our brains by evolution. Here's the thing: Stone Age groups consistently organized themselves around this same number. Hunter-gatherer bands typically consisted of 20 to 50 people, but they maintained relationships with other bands to create networks of about 150 total individuals. This wasn't coincidence. This was the optimal social structure for sharing information, providing mutual support, and ensuring genetic diversity. Now look at modern social media. Despite platforms like Facebook and Instagram allowing thousands of connections, research shows that people actively maintain meaningful relationships with, you guessed it, about 150 people. The algorithms that drive social media engagement are essentially trying to optimize ancient Stone Age social dynamics. Even more remarkably, the Stone Age concept of information sharing through social networks directly prefigures the Internet. Stone Age people developed systems for rapidly sharing crucial information: where to find food, which areas were dangerous, which tools worked best for specific tasks, across networks that spanned hundreds of miles. Obsidian tools found thousands of miles from their source quarries prove that Stone Age people maintained trade and information networks that connected communities across vast distances. These networks served the same function as modern communication systems, spreading innovations, sharing resources, and maintaining social connections across geographic barriers. The mathematical principles behind these ancient networks are identical to those used in modern internet routing protocols. Information flows through paths of least resistance, redundant connections provide resilience against failures, and local clusters connect to broader networks through strategic hub nodes. But let's talk about something even more concrete: the golden ratio. This mathematical relationship, approximately 1 to 1.618, appears constantly in nature and has been used in art and architecture for thousands of years. What's incredible is that Stone Age artists were using the golden ratio 30,000 years ago. Venus figurines, Stone Age sculptures of female forms found across Europe, consistently incorporate golden ratio proportions. These aren't crude fertility symbols. They're sophisticated artistic works that demonstrate mathematical understanding that we associate with classical Greek architecture and Renaissance art. Modern designers still use the golden ratio because it creates proportions that humans find inherently pleasing. The screens of smartphones, the layout of websites, the design of logos, IAS, countless modern applications rely on the same mathematical relationships that Stone Age artists intuited through careful observation and experimentation. And speaking of observation, Stone Age weather prediction techniques are so effective that meteorologists are studying them to improve modern forecasting. Indigenous peoples around the world maintain weather prediction methods that can forecast conditions days or even weeks in advance, using subtle environmental cues that our instruments often miss. These techniques rely on pattern recognition, long-term environmental observation, and understanding of complex system interactions, exactly the same approaches used in modern climate modeling. The difference is that Stone Age weather predictors developed their expertise through direct sensory observation rather than satellite data, but the underlying scientific principles are identical. This brings us to one of the most important Stone Age innovations that's still changing our world, the scientific method itself. Stone Age people had to be empirical scientists to survive. They couldn't afford superstitions or wishful thinking when it came to understanding their environment. If a medicinal plant didn't work, people died. If a hunting technique was ineffective, the group starved. This constant pressure for accuracy created a culture of careful observation, hypothesis testing, and evidence-based knowledge. The herbal medicine knowledge that Stone Age people developed through thousands of years of careful experimentation is still providing breakthrough discoveries for modern pharmaceutical research. Compounds that our ancestors knew were effective for treating specific conditions are now being analyzed and synthesized for modern medical applications. Aspirin from willow bark, digitalis from foxglove, quinine from cinchona bark. These aren't lucky accidents. They're the result of systematic Stone Age research into plant chemistry. Modern drug discovery often starts by studying traditional medicines that trace back to Stone Age knowledge. But perhaps the most important Stone Age innovation that's still shaping our world is the concept of sustainable technology. Stone Age people had to develop tools and techniques that didn't deplete their environment. They couldn't mine resources faster than nature could replenish them, because there was nowhere else to go when resources ran out. This created a technological philosophy that modern engineers are desperately trying to relearn. How do you create useful products without generating waste? How do you design systems that work with natural processes rather than against them? How do you meet human needs without depleting the resources that future generations will require? Stone Age people solved these problems through biomimicry, renewable materials, and circular design principles that modern sustainability experts are working to re-implementate. Their technologies were inherently circular. Waste from one process became input for another. Everything was designed for repair and reuse, and nothing was produced that couldn't be safely returned to natural systems. Modern companies are studying Stone Age material flows to design products that follow the same principles. Cradle-to-cradle manufacturing, biomimetic design, and circular economy principles all have their roots in Stone Age innovation. But here's what's really incredible. We're not just rediscovering Stone Age technologies, we're finding that many of them are still superior to modern alternatives. Take fire-starting methods. Stone Age people developed multiple techniques for creating fire that work in conditions where modern methods fail. Flint and steel works when wet. Fire bow techniques work in extreme cold. These methods require no manufactured materials, produce no waste, and can be implemented with resources available in almost any environment. Modern survival experts teach these techniques because they're more reliable than matches, lighters, or other contemporary fire-starting tools. Military units train with Stone Age fire methods because they provide backup capabilities when modern equipment fails. The same principle applies to Stone Age construction techniques. Adobe building methods developed thousands of years ago create structures that are more energy efficient, more earthquake resistant, and more environmentally sustainable than many modern construction approaches. Stone Age textiles made from plant and animal fibers often outperform synthetic alternatives in terms of durability, comfort, and environmental impact. Modern outdoor gear companies are developing products based on Stone Age clothing designs because they provide superior performance characteristics. Even Stone Age food preservation techniques are experiencing a renaissance. Fermentation, smoking, and drying methods that our ancestors used to preserve food without refrigeration are being adopted by modern food systems, seeking alternatives to chemical preservatives and energy-intensive storage methods. But the most profound way that Stone Age technology continues to shape our world isn't through specific tools or techniques. It's through the problem-solving mindset that Stone Age people developed and passed down to us. Every major technological breakthrough in human history has followed the same pattern established by that first stone tool. Identify a problem, envision a solution, modify available resources to create something new, test and refine the innovation, and share the knowledge with others. This process, 18J, problem identification, creative visualization, material modification, empirical testing, and knowledge transmission, 18J, is the foundation of all human innovation. It's the same whether we're talking about stone tools or space travel, plant medicines or pharmaceutical research, social networks or internet protocols. The smartphone in your pocket represents millions of years of accumulated innovation, but the fundamental approach to technological development hasn't changed since our ancestors first picked up rocks and started modifying them to solve problems. And here's the most remarkable thing. We're not at the end of this process. We're still applying Stone Age problem-solving approaches to develop new technologies, still discovering ancient innovations that can improve modern life, still learning from our ancestors' solutions to universal human challenges. The line from that first stone tool to whatever breakthrough technology gets developed next week is unbroken. Each innovation builds on previous ones, each generation of humans adding their own improvements to the accumulated toolkit of human knowledge. But there's something else our Stone Age ancestors left us that might be even more valuable than specific technologies or problem-solving methods. They left us a blueprint for what human life could be like if we designed it around human nature instead of fighting against it. That's where our story goes next, into the surprising ways that understanding Stone Age life can help solve modern problems and maybe even show us a better way to be human in the 21st century. All right, let's try something. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, but instead of your bedroom, you're lying on animal furs in a Stone Age shelter. Instead of your alarm clock, you're awakened by the sound of someone adding wood to the morning fire. You open your eyes to a world where every single survival skill you need, you don't have. This isn't a fun camping trip. This isn't a reality TV show where you can tap out and go home. This is your life now, and your survival depends entirely on your ability to adapt to a world where your modern skills are not just useless, they're a liability. Let's be honest about what happens next, because the reality would be both humbling and terrifying. Within the first hour, you'd realize that your eyes don't work the way you think they do. You scan the landscape outside the shelter, looking for threats or opportunities, and you see bushes and rocks and trees. That's it. But your Stone Age companions are reading that same landscape like a detailed newspaper. They see the tracks that tell them a mammoth herd passed through 2 days ago, moving northeast toward the river valley. They notice the broken branches that indicate a cave bear marked territory on that tree, and the height of the marks tells them it's a large male that could be dangerous. They spot the subtle changes in vegetation that reveal an underground water source, and the flight patterns of birds that indicate good hunting opportunities to the west. Your modern eyes, trained by a lifetime of looking at screens and focusing on objects within arm's reach, simply can't process this level of environmental detail. It's not that you're not intelligent, it's that your visual system has been optimized for a completely different world, and that's just the beginning of your problems. Your hearing is equally inadequate. You think you're listening carefully, but you're missing 90% of the information your Stone Age companions are extracting from the soundscape. They can distinguish between the footsteps of different animals, identify birds by their calls, and detect changes in wind patterns that predict weather shifts hours in advance. Your ears, dulled by a lifetime of exposure to mechanical noise and accustomed to the audio landscape of modern life, simply don't have the sensitivity to pick up these crucial survival signals. What sounds like silence to you is a complex symphony of information to them. But the really humbling part comes when you try to contribute to the group's survival activities. Let's say they're planning a hunt, and they need you to help track and pursue an animal. You're reasonably fit by modern standards. Maybe you go to the gym. Maybe you run occasionally. You think you're in decent shape. You're not even close to being in Stone Age shape. These people have muscle density and cardiovascular efficiency that you can't compete with. Their bodies have been conditioned by a lifetime of functional movement, climbing, carrying, throwing, running on uneven terrain. Your gym fitness, optimized for repetitive motions on flat surfaces, is practically useless in this environment. Within the first mile of pursuit hunting, you're exhausted. Your Stone Age companions are just getting warmed up. They maintain their steady pace for hours while you struggle to keep up. And remember, this isn't optional. If the hunt fails because you can't maintain the pace, the entire group suffers. But let's say you somehow manage to keep up with the hunt. Now comes the moment when they need to make the kill, and suddenly you discover another crucial limitation. Your throwing accuracy is laughable. Stone Age people could hit moving targets at distances that would challenge modern Olympic athletes. They developed throwing skills through constant practice from childhood, understanding projectile physics through muscle memory and intuition. You, meanwhile, probably haven't thrown anything more challenging than a ball to a dog in years. Your spear throw misses by several feet. The animal escapes. The hunt fails. And now you're not just a burden, you're a liability that actively undermines the group's survival chances. And then comes the social reality that might be the hardest part to accept. Without useful skills, Stone Age groups might simply abandon you. This isn't cruelty, it's survival mathematics. Every person in the group has to contribute enough to justify the resources they consume. If you can't hunt, can't track, can't make tools, can't identify edible plants, can't predict weather, can't navigate by the stars, and can't provide any of the dozens of other skills that keep the group alive, then keeping you around threatens everyone else's survival. Stone Age societies weren't welfare states. They couldn't afford to support non-contributing members, except in very specific circumstances. T1. Children who would eventually develop useful skills, elderly people whose knowledge was valuable, or disabled individuals whose other capabilities compensated for their limitations. You, as a modern person dropped into Stone Age life, would be in the worst possible category. An adult who consumes resources but provides no survival value. The harsh reality is that many Stone Age groups would make the practical decision to leave you behind. But let's imagine a more optimistic scenario. Let's say you're with a particularly patient and generous group that's willing to invest time in teaching you basic survival skills. Even then, your modern conditioning creates serious obstacles. Take something as simple as starting a fire. You've probably seen people do it in movies, or maybe at a demonstration. How hard could it be? Well, Stone Age fire-starting techniques require precise hand coordination, understanding of material properties, and physical endurance that take months or years to develop. Your soft, uncalloused hands blister and bleed from working the fire bow. Your lack of fine motor control makes it nearly impossible to maintain the precise pressure and speed needed for friction fire methods. What takes your Stone Age teachers minutes to accomplish takes you hours of frustrating failure. And fire is just one skill. Every aspect of Stone Age life requires expertise that you simply don't possess. Food preparation, tool maintenance, shelter construction, weather prediction, AGS, all of it demands knowledge and physical capabilities that take years to develop. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. While most modern people would struggle dramatically in Stone Age conditions, certain individuals would actually thrive, and the people who would succeed might surprise you. Ultramarathon runners, for instance, would have a significant advantage. These athletes have developed the kind of sustained endurance that Stone Age people used for persistence hunting. Their cardiovascular systems, their mental toughness, and their understanding of pacing and energy management would translate directly to Stone Age survival challenges. Primitive skills enthusiasts, IS, people who practice traditional crafts, wilderness survival, and ancestral technologies as hobbies, would obviously have a head start. They've already begun developing the manual skills, environmental awareness, and practical knowledge that Stone Age life demands. Interestingly, many military veterans, especially those with combat experience in wilderness environments, would adapt relatively quickly. Their training in situational awareness, physical conditioning, and ability to function under stress would serve them well in Stone Age conditions. But here's the most surprising group that would probably thrive: people who grew up in genuine poverty in rural environments. Individuals who learned to hunt, fish, and forage as children, who understand seasonal patterns and weather signs, who developed manual skills and resourcefulness out of necessity. EVE, these people often possess capabilities that are much closer to Stone Age expertise than anything taught in modern schools. On the flip side, the people who would struggle most aren't necessarily who you'd expect. High intelligence and advanced education provide almost no advantage in Stone Age survival. A PhD in physics doesn't help you track animals or identify edible plants. A successful business career doesn't translate to useful Stone Age skills. In fact, highly educated urban professionals might face particular challenges because their entire skill set is optimized for a technological environment that doesn't exist in the Stone Age. Their knowledge is deep but narrow, specialized for modern conditions rather than generalized for survival. And then there's the question of physical limitations that modern medicine easily corrects, but that would be devastating in Stone Age conditions. Anyone who depends on corrective lenses faces immediate and severe disadvantage. Without glasses or contacts, people with significant vision problems would be nearly helpless in an environment where visual acuity often means the difference between life and death. Similarly, people with chronic conditions that require modern medication, diabetes, heart disease, mental health conditions that respond to pharmaceutical treatment, COA, would face challenges that Stone Age medicine couldn't address. The herbal remedies and medical techniques available 30,000 years ago, while sophisticated for their time, couldn't replace modern treatments for many conditions. But here's where the thought experiment becomes really fascinating. What would Stone Age people think of us? Remember, these aren't primitive people. They're intelligent, sophisticated individuals with extensive knowledge and finely developed skills. From their perspective, we would seem like a deeply flawed and perhaps pitiable version of humanity. Our pale skin, weak bones, and poor muscle tone would be immediately obvious signs of poor health. Our soft hands would indicate a life free from useful work. Our poor eyesight, hearing, and other sensory limitations would suggest fundamental physical inadequacy. Most shocking to them would be our mental health. Stone Age people, living in close-knit social groups with clear purposes and constant physical challenges, rarely experience the anxiety, depression, and existential confusion that plague modern societies. From their perspective, our high rates of mental illness might seem like evidence of a fundamentally broken way of life. They would be baffled by our physical weakness and poor conditioning. How could adult humans be so incapable of basic physical tasks? Why would people choose to live in ways that made their bodies weak and unhealthy? Our social isolation would seem equally bizarre. Stone Age people lived in tight-knit communities where everyone knew everyone else, and social relationships were the foundation of survival. The idea of people living alone, spending entire days without meaningful social interaction, would seem like a form of voluntary self-torture, and our relationship with our environment would be completely incomprehensible to them. The idea that people could live their entire lives without understanding the natural world, without knowing where their food comes from or how their tools are made, would seem like a form of willful ignorance that threatened survival. But perhaps most confusing would be our chronic stress and anxiety, despite living in material abundance. Stone Age people faced real immediate threats, predators, starvation, environmental dangers. But they also had effective ways of dealing with these stresses through physical activity, social support, and direct action. Modern humans experience chronic stress from abstract threats, webros, financial insecurity, social media comparison, career pressure, existential uncertainty. We live in a state of constant low-level anxiety about problems that our Stone Age stress response systems aren't designed to handle. From a Stone Age perspective, we would seem like people who had forgotten how to be human. We've gained incredible technological capabilities, but lost basic competencies that define what it means to be a functional adult in the natural world. Yet there's another side to this comparison that might surprise you. In some ways, we've retained and even enhanced certain Stone Age capabilities. Our capacity for learning and adaptation is actually greater than our ancestors in many ways. While we've lost specific skills like tracking and foraging, we've maintained and expanded the cognitive flexibility that allows humans to acquire new knowledge quickly. Many modern people, when motivated by necessity, can learn primitive skills remarkably fast. The same mental capabilities that allow us to master complex technologies can be redirected toward traditional survival skills with impressive results. Our tool-making abilities, while focused on different materials and purposes, represent a direct continuation of Stone Age innovation. Modern engineers and craftspeople use the same problem-solving approaches that Stone Age toolmakers employed, just applied to different challenges. And our social cooperation capabilities, while expressed through different institutions, still reflect the same collaborative instincts that made Stone Age communities successful. We've scaled up our cooperation to include millions of people rather than just bands of 150, but the underlying social intelligence is the same. But the most important insight from this thought experiment isn't about our limitations or capabilities compared to Stone Age people. It's about recognizing that many of our modern problems stem from the mismatch between the environments we evolved for and the environments we've created. Our bodies and minds are still fundamentally Stone Age, designed for a world of physical challenges, tight social bonds, and direct relationship with the natural environment. When we try to function in modern environments that don't provide these conditions, we experience stress, illness, and dysfunction. Understanding this mismatch doesn't mean we should abandon modern life and return to hunting and gathering, but it does suggest that we might be healthier and happier if we designed our modern lives to better accommodate our Stone Age nature. Regular physical activity that mimics the movement patterns our bodies evolved for, strong social connections that provide the community support our mental health requires, exposure to natural environments that engage our evolved sensory systems. These aren't luxury additions to modern life. They're basic requirements for human well-being. The Stone Age people who might initially pity our weakness and confusion would probably also recognize our potential. After all, we carry the same genetic heritage they do. The same capacity for learning, adaptation, and innovation that allowed them to thrive in harsh environments still exists within us. The question isn't whether we could survive in the Stone Age, given enough time and motivation. Many of us probably could. The question is whether we can learn from Stone Age wisdom to create better ways of living in the modern world, and that wisdom runs deeper than just survival skills or technological innovations. It encompasses a complete understanding of what human beings need to thrive, knowledge that we've lost in our rush toward technological advancement, but desperately need to rediscover. That's where our final chapter takes us, into the profound lessons our Stone Age ancestors left for us about how to live well as human beings in any environment, and how those lessons might hold the key to solving some of our most pressing modern challenges. Here's the truth that's going to change how you see everything. The Stone Age never ended. We just covered it with concrete and forgot that underneath all our technology, we're still running Stone Age software in our bodies and minds. Every single day, your Stone Age brain wakes up expecting certain things. It expects physical challenges that build strength and endurance. It expects tight social bonds with people who matter to your survival. It expects exposure to natural light cycles, varied terrain, and environments that engage all your senses. It expects periods of scarcity followed by abundance, times of intense activity followed by rest, and a direct connection between effort and reward. Instead, we give it fluorescent lights, desk chairs, processed food, social media, and constant low-level stress about abstract problems it was never designed to solve. And then we wonder why rates of anxiety, depression, obesity, and chronic disease are exploding across the developed world. This isn't just speculation, this is science. It's called mismatch theory, and it's revolutionizing how we understand modern health problems. Think about sleep, for instance. Your Stone Age brain expects darkness to signal rest time and bright light to signal activity time, but we've created environments with artificial light that confuses these ancient signals. We stare at screens that emit blue light right up until bedtime, then wonder why we have trouble sleeping. Stone Age people went to sleep when it got dark and woke up when the sun rose. Their sleep cycles were naturally regulated by light exposure, physical exhaustion from daily activity, and the security of sleeping in groups. They didn't need sleep aids or therapy for insomnia because their lifestyle naturally promoted healthy sleep. The same mismatch affects our eating patterns. Your Stone Age digestive system expects periods of scarcity followed by abundance. It's designed to store energy when food is available and burn stored energy when food is scarce. But we've created environments with constant food availability and engineered foods that trigger maximum pleasure responses in our brains. Your Stone Age brain can't distinguish between finding a rare honey cache, which would have been an incredible survival advantage, and walking into a modern grocery store filled with sugar-loaded processed foods. It still reacts to sweet, fatty, salty foods as if they're rare treasures that should be consumed immediately and stored as body fat for future scarcity periods that never come. But here's what's really fascinating. When modern people adopt lifestyle patterns that match our Stone Age biology, many chronic health problems simply disappear. Intermittent fasting, sees not 50, eating patterns that include periods without food, mimics the SPEET, natural scarcity and abundance cycles our digestive systems evolved for. People who practice intermittent fasting often experience improved metabolism, better cognitive function, and reduced markers of chronic disease. High-intensity interval training, HIIT, short bursts of intense activity followed by recovery periods, HIIT, mirrors the activity patterns of Stone Age hunting and gathering. This type of exercise produces better fitness results than steady-state cardio because it matches what our bodies were designed to do. Exposure to natural environments, FUIS, what researchers call forest bathing or ecotherapy, reduces stress hormones, improves immune function, and enhances mental well-being. Our Stone Age nervous systems literally calm down when we're in natural settings because that's the environment they evolved to function in. Even our social needs reflect Stone Age programming. Remember Dunbar's number, IT, that limit of about 150 meaningful relationships that our brains can maintain? That's still optimal for mental health today. People with strong social networks within that size range experience better physical health, greater resilience to stress, and longer lifespans. But social media algorithms exploit our Stone Age social instincts in ways that create anxiety rather than connection. Our brains evolved to form tight bonds with people we interact with face-to-face regularly. When we try to maintain superficial connections with hundreds or thousands of people through digital platforms, it creates a constant state of social overload and comparison stress. The anxiety and depression epidemics in developed countries aren't primarily caused by chemical imbalances or modern stressors. They're caused by environments that don't provide what Stone Age humans need to thrive: physical challenges, meaningful social bonds, connection to nature, and clear purposes that contribute to group survival. This is why wilderness therapy works so well for many mental health conditions. When people are placed in environments that require Stone Age-type skills, navigation, shelter building, fire making, group cooperation, AI, their anxiety and depression often improve dramatically without medication. It's why physical labor and craftsmanship can be so psychologically satisfying, even when it's economically unnecessary. Your Stone Age brain rewards you for activities that would have enhanced survival chances. Building things, fixing things, creating useful objects with your hands. It's why many people find profound satisfaction in gardening, hiking, camping, and other activities that reconnect them with natural processes and physical challenges. These activities aren't just recreation, MBS. They're medicine for minds and bodies that evolved for a completely different environment. But the most important lesson from mismatch theory isn't about individual lifestyle choices. It's about recognizing that many of our social and environmental problems stem from systems designed around modern conveniences rather than human nature. Urban planning that requires cars for every trip creates environments where people don't get enough physical activity. Educational systems that keep children sitting still for hours at a time ignore the fact that young humans evolved to learn through movement and exploration. Work environments that isolate people in cubicles or home offices deprive them of the social interaction that mental health requires. The good news is that understanding our Stone Age nature provides a blueprint for designing better modern systems. Cities with walkable neighborhoods, abundant green space, and community gathering areas support human well-being in ways that suburban sprawl doesn't. Schools that incorporate outdoor time, physical movement, and hands-on learning work better than purely academic approaches. Workplaces that encourage collaboration, provide natural light, and allow for movement and variety create healthier, more productive employees. And this brings us to perhaps the most profound discovery our Stone Age ancestors left for us. It's not a tool or a technique or a piece of knowledge. It's a place that challenges everything we think we know about the relationship between civilization and human development. In 1994, archaeologists working in southeastern Turkey uncovered something that shouldn't exist. According to everything we thought we knew about human history, what they found was impossible. It was a massive stone temple complex called Göbekli Tepe, and it was built 12,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers. Think about what this means. According to traditional historical narratives, hunter-gatherers were supposed to be nomadic people living at subsistence level, focused entirely on survival. Agriculture was supposed to come first, then surplus food production, then settlement, then specialization, then monumental architecture and organized religion. But Göbekli Tepe proved that story wrong. Here was evidence of sophisticated architecture, artistic achievement, and organized religion, created by people who were still hunting and gathering for their food. They built massive stone temples before they built permanent houses. They developed spiritual and social institutions before they developed agriculture. The implications are staggering. Göbekli Tepe suggests that our ancestors' social and spiritual lives were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. They weren't just surviving, they were creating meaning, beauty, and community institutions that required enormous coordination and shared vision. And here's the most remarkable part. After building this incredible temple complex and maintaining it for over 1,000 years, they deliberately buried it. They covered the entire site with tons of earth and abandoned it. Why? We don't know. But the act of burial suggests that they understood their creation was significant enough to preserve for future discovery. Göbekli Tepe represents something profound about human nature that we've largely forgotten in our modern rush toward technological advancement. Our ancestors understood that humans need more than just material security to thrive. They need purpose, community, spiritual connection, and the opportunity to create something larger than themselves. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were still living Stone Age lifestyles, but they were using their accumulated knowledge and social cooperation to create monuments that would outlast any individual lifetime. They understood that human fulfillment comes not just from meeting immediate survival needs, but from contributing to something that transcends individual existence. This insight, that humans need transcendent purpose and community meaning-making, is perhaps the most important lesson our Stone Age ancestors left for us. And it's the lesson we've most completely forgotten in our modern focus on individual achievement and material accumulation. Stone Age people lived in what anthropologists call gift economies, social systems based on mutual obligation and reciprocity rather than market exchange. Your status wasn't determined by how much you could accumulate, but by how much you could contribute to the group's well-being. This created social structures that naturally promoted cooperation, generosity, and shared responsibility. Modern research on happiness and life satisfaction consistently shows that people who feel connected to communities larger than themselves, who engage in meaningful work that helps others, and who maintain strong social bonds, report higher levels of well-being than people focused primarily on personal wealth or achievement. The Stone Age understanding of human nature, that we're fundamentally social creatures who thrive when we feel useful to our communities, points towards solutions for many modern problems that seem unsolvable from purely technological or economic perspectives. Mental health epidemics could be addressed by creating communities that provide the social support and meaningful purpose that humans need. Environmental problems could be solved by adopting the long-term thinking and resource conservation practices that kept Stone Age societies sustainable for hundreds of thousands of years. Social inequality could be reduced by returning to economic systems that prioritize community well-being over individual accumulation. This doesn't mean abandoning modern technology or returning to hunting and gathering. It means designing modern systems that work with human nature rather than against it. It means recognizing that our Stone Age ancestors weren't primitive people who lacked civilization, RIA. They were sophisticated people who understood what humans need to thrive. The builders of Göbekli Tepe left us a message carved in stone. Humans are capable of creating beauty, meaning, and lasting monuments, even when living close to the natural world. They proved that you don't have to choose between technological advancement and human well-being, between progress and sustainability, between individual development and community connection. They showed us that the highest human achievements come not from conquering nature or accumulating resources, but from understanding our place in the larger web of life and using our unique capabilities to create something worthy of our potential. The Stone Age never ended because the fundamental challenges of being human never changed. We still need purpose, community, physical challenges, and connection to something larger than ourselves. We still benefit from the wisdom, innovations, and insights that our ancestors developed over millions of years of human experience. The difference is that now we have the knowledge and tools to create environments that honor our Stone Age nature while providing the benefits of modern technology. We can design cities that feel like villages, work that feels like meaningful contribution, and communities that provide the social support our mental health requires. The choice isn't between the Stone Age and the modern world. The choice is between systems that work with human nature and systems that work against it, between technologies that enhance human well-being and technologies that diminish it, between progress that includes everyone and progress that leaves people behind. Our Stone Age ancestors spent millions of years figuring out how to be human. They left us the blueprint. The question is whether we're wise enough to use it. The story of the Stone Age isn't ancient history. It's the foundation of everything we are and everything we could become. And the most important discoveries are still waiting to be made, not in archaeological sites, but in the application of ancient wisdom to modern challenges. That's the real legacy of the Stone Age, not primitive techniques that we've outgrown, but timeless insights about human nature that we ignore at our peril. The builders of Göbekli Tepe understood something we're still learning, that being human means more than just surviving. It means creating meaning, building community, and leaving something beautiful for those who come after us. That understanding, that humans are capable of greatness when we align our lives with our nature, is the greatest gift our ancestors left us, and it's waiting for us to unwrap it